Welcome, everybody. It's the final session. What? I don't know about you. This day has flown by. So rich. I'm literally overflowing with learnings and questions. And I haven't even seen all the panels. I can't wait to see the two that I missed. Thank you for an amazing day. Thank you to all of our panelists and our moderators, to our kick butt producers in residence, in addition to Courtney and Reg, who also led these moderation panels, who formed these conversations. Thank you so much. Time to welcome these amazing panelists to our final fantastic conversation of the day. So I'm going to start by inviting Elaine Romero, who is a playwright, a scholar, an organizer, an educator. She's a yogi. She's a festival namesake, for goodness sake. And she is also an NNPN affiliated artist whose play Ponzi received an NNPN annual commission with Kitchen Dog Theater, where it also received its world premiere in 2011.
Hello.
And I get to introduce Raymond O. Caldwell, who is a performer, a director, an educator, an activist. He has been the producing artistic director of Theater Alliance in Washington, D.C. since January of 2019, and also serves as a resident director and lecturer at Howard University. His award-winning work as a performer, director, and new play developer has taken him across the country and around the world. And I am also calling, I have the great delight to welcome Jack Ruler, who is a director, a mentor, a long-serving NNPN board member, a visionary leader, and a big fan of the Minnesota Vikings. He is the beloved founder of Mixed Blood Theater in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and is in the process of looking forward to becoming, in his words, the second best artistic director in the company's history, as the search for his successor unfolds.
And I'm going to say goodbye to my colleague, Jess, to leave space on this tiny 5-person stage for our final introduction of the evening. My friend, person who I'm honored to call my friend, Tara Branham, who is, can you hear me? Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. My headphones just died in my head. Okay, Tara, she is an advocate for brave spaces, harm reduction, and practices that transform collaborators into communities. She is a director of theater and opera. She is wrapping up her second year as producer in residence at Chicago's Prop Theater. She is a force, y'all, for positive change in our field. And we are delighted to introduce her and invite her to moderate this conversation. Welcome, Tara. This is such an amazing group of people. I'm going to fangirl backstage now. Bye. Have fun.
Thank you, Jordana. Okay. Hey, everyone. I know we just got like the most amazing introductions. I feel super filled and loved from that. But can we go ahead and still do name, pronouns? And let's go ahead and start with your role in your theater again, just in case, and or the NNPN. So I'll start. Tara, she, her, hers, and anything respectful. I am the producer in residence with Prop Theater, and I'm a director of opera and theater in my life. Pass.
I'm Jack Ruler. I work at the Mixed Blood Theater. I use he, him, his. I'm on the an uninvited guest of the Mindawakaton in Dakota, and I have been a part of NNPN since its beginning as a board member for all 23 years, and as a participating board member. Raymond.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Raymond Caldwell, he, him, his. I am coming to you live from the land of the Nicossatine and the Piscataway people. I am the producing artistic director here at Theater Alliance. Yeah.
I'm Elaine Romero. I'm on the lands of the Tohono O'odham and the Yaqui. I'm here in Arizona. I use she, her, hers, aya pronouns. I don't know which capacity in which I've been invited. I'm the playwrights in residence at Arizona Theater Company. I'm an independent playwright, obviously, here with NNPN and many other companies. I'm one of the members of our town's New Play Initiative, and I'm a professor at the University of Arizona, where the last couple of years I have served on season selection for our two companies there. So I have many roles, but playwright, professor, thinker, that's me.
Wonderful. I am so stoked to be talking with all of you today. I want to bring us into the space with a quote from Cesar Chavez. We cannot seek achievement for ourselves and forget about progress and prosperity for our community. Our ambitions must be broad enough to include the aspirations and needs of others for their sakes and for our own. I was looking for a quote to kick us off today, this idea of theaters as community service organizations, and then this idea of nonprofit status and what is expected by our communities from us because of that. And that quote really stood out to me. So kicking it off with a really simple question that is difficult to answer, I hope. What made you choose to be a community-centered theater, or what choose to make you create community-centered work?
Take it, Raymond.
No, I love that. Thanks, Jack. I will say that I wanted to create community-centered work as a byproduct of the fact that I think that I come from a subset of people who have often not been centered in the American theater space. And so I think that the goal of my work as an artistic leader has always been, well, how do I flip that? How do I change that so that folks who look like me, folks who have experiences like me, might find a home in the American theater, the way that I kind of forced my way in.
Thank you. Jack or Lane?
Okay, sure, I'll go. It is a long path that we've been on in this manner, but in the last 20 years, the neighborhood in which Mixed Blood has resided since its beginning became an immigrant refugee community for East African, mostly Somali and Oromo immigrants and refugees, most of whom are Muslim, and we had to make a decision whether we were going to become an island in the community we'd always been or remain an anchor of some kind. And so we really chose to be part of our community in important ways. And for 15 years, we did program after program to try to create an audience performance relationship. And it was really only after trying so many things unsuccessfully that we decided that was not the right relationship, that how could we use theater as a tool and theater as a practice to create a healthy community, with health being defined by health care, but also safety and education, employment and recreation, and the environment and transportation. And how could we use theater and theater practices to advance that? On the block we reside in, there's 5,000 people that come from 63 countries, but again, with a primarily East African population. And we just wanted to be part of that community, not be dismissed by the block.
Thank you.
Well, I'll say with our town's theater initiative, we're really thinking about how do we bridge the cultural divide through theater. That's a big question that we've been thinking about and talking about for a year, and we're just initiating our first programs. But I will say, as a playwright, and particularly as an NNPN playwright, because I would have no career without this place. I mean, honestly, you all made me and shared me and made my life and told me my work mattered before other people did. So I'm going to cry, but that's how I feel. And I guess what I want to share about that is I think, as theaters want to intersect with their communities, they always ask their playwright to be on the front lines of that. Will you teach this workshop? Will you do this? So playwrights, this is second nature for us. We are like, I always think of myself as like a presidential candidate. I have seen this country truly as a playwright, going into community after community and building my career from the inside out and saying, everybody can fight over the coasts. I'm going to go from the middle out. Let's see what happens there. And doing that has made my life different. And it's shown me the US in ways I'm so privileged to know this country. I don't think I could know it. And I think that, just by being a playwright active in the world, you land in community. And then as you think more about what's happening in your culture and your country, and you see all this upending of the idea of even mastery, the idea of mentorship, everything has been upended. There's not so much this idea that, okay, people who know what they're doing are over here and people who don't know what they're doing are over here. And that equalizing that's been happening, of course it can be frustrating if you have a lot of experience and tons of credits. You're like, okay, I'm here with somebody who's done nothing and we're all equal. And that's also great. But I think all of that upending leads us back to community, because I think what we learn about community is we think that we're going to go teach something. And then that's never the thing. It comes back. And I think, one of the things that I think about and I meditate on as I initiate these projects in different spaces that I have the privilege of being in is, how do we invite our community to be artists and to do art, not for us to just reflect them and say, you go sit seat over there and let me be you on stage. But how do we be much bolder than that? And for me, that's kind of where I've landed after a really long time of trying different ways and different things. And of course, as a playwright, I continue to reflect, the world that I see and the community that I see. But I do feel like if there's not space to invite people to be artists, we don't really have a right to be in their faces.
And I think, to a certain extent, that it's really the birthright of the regional theater movement. The regional theater movement began to decentralize theater from New York and London, and that's how theater got to the rest of America. And now the evolution of that, it's time to re-centralize in the geographic communities in which we live, using our staff, our services, our spaces, and our programming to become better stewards of the communities in which we live. And I think certainly during COVID, when so many theater leaders said our stages are our soapboxes and our artists are our town criers, as we come back to be public in person again, it'll be interesting to see how that continues to play forward.
Thank you for that. We've already started touching on this with Elaine's response, but I want to lift up this question of what are the ways that you have found to listen to what your community needs? That's something that I feel like we're always asking ourselves as artists. It's like, how do we have this communication? Elaine mentioned that as a playwright, she gets called in to have these sort of discussions with the community. Do you have more specifications about that, or what are other things and other ways?
Yeah, so I guess I'll jump in then. I think it's different for wherever you are and what community you are responding to and building for. I'll say that here in Washington, D.C., Theater Alliance is located in Ward 8, which is Anacostia, which is a historically Black community. We are one of the only regional theaters or smaller theaters in the area. So, one of the things that I did when I took over the company is I told my board, we're a political company. We are creating political work for our community. And if we are going to be a political company creating work for our community, then we actually have to show up where our community is. And so it so happens that here in Washington, D.C., we have coordinating councils. And our coordinating councils are actually where the work within communities get done. So I think about every major nonprofit in Ward 8 that is serving Ward 8 authentically, and they come to the community council meetings. And so it's important for us organizationally to be a part of that coordinating council. We are having conversations about moving our board to membership and finding a member on the council so that we actually have that type of representation at the leadership level of the organization. And then, past that, I think it's about actually tangibly showing up in your community. I think sometimes it's very easy to make community engagement lip service and to say we're doing this thing. But I think the true test of community engagement is when you're out in the community, what does the community say about you? Yeah, and so that has always been our test. Because we are out showing our faces in the community, it's important for us to broker and build those relationships on not a business in a business space, but on a pure personal level. So I find myself now, and I live, it's important for me as we talk about building community, I live in the community that my theater company serves. And so now I know my neighbors on a very personal level. And I want to lift up that idea that Jack brought up. Once upon a time, the regional theater was a response. And so regional theaters were hyper local. And so community members were enmeshed into the life of an organization. And so I suppose that's what we're trying to think about as we are building community engagement initiatives at Theater Alliance.
It's been interesting because the regional theater where I work has really, during COVID, really turned inward toward community and really thought and valued community. Surprised me with the festival of my own work, which was a shocker. In February, we did a whole month of my plays in conjunction with a whole bunch of other companies. I think that COVID has brought our company to a place where, they'd already been talking about, hey, we have a new artistic director. How do we involve more Arizona artists? But I think realizing that we're on this little ship together in a different sort of way during COVID. I think COVID's also made us long for each other in ways that we haven't longed for each other, perhaps, all of us, to be together, to have that unity. And I would just say that, from the beginning of my career here in Arizona, I always knew historians in this community who knew about what was going on here. And I do feel like, and I am also a dramaturg, and I would share that I think a lot of our community work, I was reflecting on this morning, is like we need to think like dramaturgs. Like, what is our context? What is, who are we? And where has our theater been? If we're being brought in to take over a theater, what is that? What has happened at that theater? We may make a lot of assumptions about what hasn't been done or what has been done. And when we talk about how is our company seen, a lot of that stuff might be 20, 30 years old, and the community still having certain conversations. And in the case of this company that I'm working with here, reversing those attitudes and those conversations, or trying to have new conversations when you realize people have just given up on your company altogether and said, well, I'm not welcome there. And how do you start over? That reset can be very hard. It can be almost harder than beginning a new company and trying to build relationships. But I would say, listen to your prophets. Listen to the people that you don't know are prophets yet. I think I go back to meeting this kid when I was at a cafe in downtown Tucson, and he was in high school. And he said to me, will you read my poetry? And I said, sure. And I read his poetry. And he said, well, what do you think? And I said, I think you should listen to your genius. He's now like a really well-known poet, and everybody knows his name. And I do think that in every moment that we have with our companies, as educators, whoever we are in the theatrical world, we hold another artist in our hand. And the responsibility of that, before an artist has blossomed, before they have walked into who they are yet, is so profound. And I feel like we don't know yet. And so if we can just sit with our not knowing and realize that everybody we're interacting with is bringing something, and we don't know how powerful it might be yet. We just have to treat it as if it were, because we just can't know. And I think that for me in working with community, this is incredibly important. And it doesn't have to be somebody who's a young person, although it can be that. It might be somebody who's been a prophet in our community for a long time. I think that we don't listen to the prophets of our communities. I think that's really hard. And I think we have to start to see each other and to see who they are and to invite them, because as I'm saying this from somebody who's been here a very long time in Arizona, who just had this festival of my work. And I'm not trying to call myself a prophet, but perhaps some people do, like playwrights are. I think that we don't know who we're with. We don't know what they bring. And we have to walk and treat it as if we're holding an artist gently in our hands. I just think that's what we have to do.
Thank you.
If I can speak to how Mixed Blood has not only listened, but gotten better at listening and really made listening our primary activity, that about 13 years ago, we decided there were certain populations we wanted to have deeper, broader relationships with. And so while so many theaters have an outreach director who's often set up to fail because they're supposed to be that theater's connection to every community in the region, we decided to have a bunch of year-round part-time organizers with their own advisory councils that would allow us to go deeper. And so we had a disability advisory council with a year-round organizer, Latinx organizer with extensive advisory council, a trans advisory council, and then in our own neighborhood, Cedar Riverside, it's a neighborhood, we had another one. So we had these 4 year-round part-time people with collectively about 40 people to whom we could listen. And for a long time, I think we had it backwards, where we were saying, what can you do for mixed blood in your connections to your community? We're going to do this kind of programming. We have this kind of space available. And then we turned it around and said, how can we, again, our staff, our facility, our programming, our services, be of service and support to your community? And that led us to change the overall, almost the overall mission of the organization. Instead of look at these really interesting plays we're doing and have an important conversation, to we're going to listen and we want to be part of your story, is really sort of the impetus to the creation of work going forward. And so listening is the most active thing we do and will do, and how the art will come from listening.
I love that idea of listening as being the most active thing that you do. From that, have there been unexpected requests or unexpected needs in your community that you have been able to step up and provide in a way that maybe you weren't expecting a theater to, or had no idea how your artistic organization or you as an artist might be able to do it? So what's an unexpected need in your community that you were able to serve?
Well, I'll speak to that one just because it really happened, and I completely credit an awesome staff who saw a need, responded, and really that, again, I spoke about the population of the block on which we live, but when COVID started, and then when the uprising happened after the murder of George Floyd, one of the people on staff started food service for elders that live in these high rises near us, and then created sort of a patrol. So while buildings really on the next block were being vandalized, looted, and burned to the ground, nothing happened on our block because he organized 15 people to surround the block with walkie-talkies. And then we became a food shelter, and we became a voter registration place, and then we became COVID testing and flu shots, and we really became a resource that our location, we activated our building and the location was in to serve our community in ways that built more trust than 45 years of plays before that.
Thank you.
Raymond.
Jack loves calling on me tonight. I love it. It's really interesting because when I think about Ward 8, when I think about Anacostia, the community that I come to, I was actually at a community meeting 2 nights ago, and everyone was talking about all of the needs in our community, particularly post-COVID. One, Anacostia is a food desert. So our need is already really great. The socioeconomic disparity that we find in our ward alone, so there are just so many needs. And not to mention, the thing that we are facing directly in our community right now, there has been a major uptick in gun violence in my neighborhood. So my staff and I have been having lots of conversations about this because, the truth of the matter is, and I love the idea that we are artists and we believe our art can change the world. And yes, I believe that that's a very beautiful sentiment. But in reality, for the people in my community, the last thing that they actually need right now is a fucking play, right? And that's just real. Let's just keep that 100. So what we as an organization can do is very small, but I think very large, actually. We can create art that actually creates conversations about these ideas, but more importantly, I think it's important for us to galvanize our audience. If we say that we're a political organization, then we're about coalition building. So the strongest thing that we actually can do to address gun violence, to address food disparity, to address poverty, is actually build coalition with other nonprofit organizations. And so that's exactly what we did and do. You know, when COVID happened, we stopped all of our fundraising and told everyone in our network, please do not give to Theater Alliance, give to this food bank, give to these organizations that are actually providing services on the ground for people. And throughout the pandemic, that's exactly what we did. When I think about the art that we're creating, the goal of our work on our stage is simply to create a conversation to move our audiences to tangible action. So every single show partners with a nonprofit partner who has helped in the community dramaturgy of that production. And then after every single show, we let our audiences know it's not enough just to sit yourself down, pat yourself on the back and go, wow, I am so woke now. I've seen a play. That's not enough. Now you move that into action. And the thing that we center here at Theater Alliance is that movement, every great movement takes all types. There are always going to be the people. I'm always going to be the bitch that's going to want to be on the front line. That's who I am. Yeah, that's who Raymond is. But I have to recognize that everyone in my community doesn't want and can't be on the front line, does not have the capacity for a movement like that. But you know what they have capacity for? Stapling, stuffing envelopes. And every single bit helps. And so what we can do is connect our audiences to the actual resources in our community so that they can actually put their hands to the problem. But all we can do is build the coalition. And so that's what we are thinking of. You know, we don't have our own theater space proper. We're resident at a theater company. And so our space isn't the thing we can do, but our productions are the things and the spaces we can galvanize in.
I would say that with our town's new play initiative, you know, we're really thinking about theater in a very, very different sort of way, where we're bringing together these disparate places and learning the stories of one place and bringing them to another, and having a very non-traditional approach to what we're doing, and not doing some kind of documentary theater where it just, you know, where we're coming and taking people's words and saying, okay, this is our play over here, but doing something very different than that. And then in terms of Arizona Theater Company, where I'm the resident playwright, during COVID, we presented all of our work for free, even though that wasn't always easy. And, you know, we also, I think like many companies, we realized all the people who had left, who weren't able to come to the theater anymore, suddenly could engage with us again. You know, elders, people who were living with disabilities, who might not be able to make it to the theater. And so I think a lot of times, at least for me, I know that I've been very excited about that, the re-welcoming back of people because of having these online ways of doing things and the accessibility of that. That's been really, really special. And, you know, I also just feel like sometimes we ask people that volunteer with us to do certain things, or people that are involved with our company to do certain things. And what I always think is so fun is how they always have something different in mind. Like you could say, okay, you're going to go do this thing over here. And then, but the listening is, what is that different thing that people have in mind? And then a lot of times you realize whatever secret they're holding in their heart, artistically, or about wanting to be heard, or whatever those things are. And I think, you know, we often think, you know, we have these little boxes for folks. Okay, donor box. You know, all these lawyers who are really writers. I mean, every time I meet a lawyer, they have like a screenplay somewhere. Like everybody has something. And I think, you know, just liberating the artists within the community to be artists, and, you know, and not limiting who people are to you. I think that's just, again, you know, expanding how we see people. You know, my community is going through a lot. I will tell you, this has been a really, really rough time. And, you know, yes, writing, yes, inviting people, but there's just so many basically human things that I think each of us, each artist here in Tucson, you know, is participating in to continue forward as human beings and as artists. You know, COVID has hit Arizona really a lot. We're dealing a lot with a lot of things. And I feel like, you know, in some ways, you know, people have said, oh, I'm so sad that we can't go to theater. We don't have enough plays right now. And honestly, the human cost I think at least with most of the artists that I'm intersecting with, that's what we're looking at. And especially our communities of color, especially my Latinx community, just being aware of how disproportionately hit our community is and how we have different thoughts. It's not just about being inconvenienced right now. And I think that I want to hold that going forward with all these theaters that I'm intersecting with, that I'm part of, that we just can't forget what just happened or what's still happening. We just can't forget that. We have to, and it's not just, oh, here's a nice life lesson. We have to go deeper than that. And as theaters, either as our individual artists or as theaters, I think part of our task will be, how do we absorb what has happened together and move forward together, and not just delete it as an unpleasant memory. Too many souls, too many parents and cousins and loved ones for that.
Going from that idea of how do we, in this hopefully soon to be post-COVID moment, maintain those levels of like transparency and vulnerability and openness, I want to lift up Howard's question, which for me is a vulnerable question. Do your deep relationships with your communities inhibit the artistic risks you can take or enable you to take greater risks creatively? Or is it independent? Is it non-correlative?
Jack?
Greater, Jack. It's greater. The answer is greater.
Jack, you're muted.
I think that one of the things that we did several years ago, starting in 2011, something called radical hospitality, where we took out any barrier. The intent was to take out barriers to participation in live theater, but the one that, as we listened, crossed everybody was cost. And as we eliminated cost of admission, that anybody can see any show at Mixed Blood for free, the ability to take artistic risks instead of trying to just exploded. We could do whatever we wanted, that we didn't have to worry it. The more earned income reliant a theater gets, the more risk averse it becomes. And so by not having that, we were really able to do the artistic work we wanted in ways we wanted. In the course of this year, we went from saying we need to do theatrical work that reveals the change that needs to be made to we need to do theatrical work that drives the change to be made and involve people in that over a long period of time. So as both Elaine and Raymond have said, a call to action that actually results in change, whether it's change in policy and attitude or behavior, but not just an important conversation when the show is over. And how do we partner so that we become a grain of sand in a desert of change, that by working together with various communities and partners.
Thank you.
I feel like the community makes us greater. I think it's such a big mirror, and you just can't cheat, and it just forces you to say, I can't compromise any little element in any little secret corner. I just can't, because I'm looking at you and you're looking at me, and and I think that is the most beautiful thing about intersecting with community and really being in a true partnership, because you're accountable. And you're answering to it every second. And I love that level of responsibility and accountability. For me, that's just so inspiring, and why I continue to go back to community to be inspired for the work and to bring that work there. And, I think that there was this idea that community theater and professional theater, and I love the way that's been all busted open. And how now it's like if you do community, then you're actually doing really deep work. And, it's no longer that little weird stepchild that we used to talk about 100 million years ago. I'm glad that that's over. I'm glad those separations have ended. They're classists, and they just have to go.
Yeah, I think that our relationship with our community actually expands the artistic risk that we can take. Because I think our community, at least at Theater Alliance, is telling us this is the conversation we need. We need to have conversations, for example, about the foundations of racism in America. So they're giving us the frame. And if they give us the frame, then I get to bring in a bunch of artists to take risks inside of that frame. But my community almost allows the outline so that the artist can really come in and color inside those lines. Because if we're all coloring inside those lines, then we're serving our community. Because that's what this is the conversation the community needs. So I think it actually allows the artist to work actually very, very freely because we know the boundaries of the conversation. We know what it is we're attempting to create and have conversation around.
Thank you. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I know we started a little bit late today, so if it's okay with you, I'd like to keep us for just maybe at least like one more question. And I know that as an artist and creator and a member of a theater company, one of the biggest things that I deal with as an artistic administrator is, oh, this feels so impossible. How am I going to make this happen? And I was wondering if you can either share like a recollection of the first steps you started making toward this community-centered goal. Like what was with the idea being that like, what can they maybe start to percolate on tomorrow or in the next 5 minutes? What is the next action they can take? And then conversely, if you're like, I don't remember what that was, what do you wish you would have known when you started? Maybe is the other question.
Raymond?
Elaine? I'll happily go. I'll say this, that, one of the things that we centered early on is the why. Why are we doing this work, right? And I think the more that we began to center the why, it gave us the greater, it clarified a lot of what it is we were doing. The why was our community. And so we started asking ourselves, well, how do we hold ourselves accountable? If we're saying we're doing community work and work for the community, what is that level of accountability and how do then we set that up? So one of the very first things that we did was an actual strategic plan to actually talk to our community, because I think sometimes when we start our community engagement work, we make the assumption that we know what our community needs, right? Because that's how we want to think. We think we're being very helpful. And so instead, turning to the community and asking our community, what is it that the community needs? And how is it that we can engage with that community? So that defined for us our strategic plan for our community. And that most importantly was about defining, well, who the community is. Everybody says they're serving a community, right? So when we talk about community, let's actually define who that is so we can hold ourselves accountable to that idea. So we said we are serving first and foremost, and through our strategic plan, I think we realized that we actually are serving community on almost a tiered level. Our first and most direct community that we are always wanting to serve is the community that we are geographically located in. Anacostia Ward 8, if you can walk to this theater, then we want to serve you. You are our community. So that is tier 1 of our community. What's tricky about defining just Anacostia here is that DC is, and if you've been to DC, we're connected to both Maryland and Virginia as well. It's an incredibly geographic rich space. And so the truth of the matter is tier 1 is Anacostia and Ward 8, but we're also serving Washington, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, this tri-state area. So this is tier 2. And then finally, the third tier of who we're serving in our community is actually this space, the National New Play Network. We are adamant at Theater Alliance about creating a space for Black artists to create work. It has been very clear to me that a number of Black playwrights all throughout the country create their work in white institutions under the veil of whiteness. And so that becomes very tricky because in these institutions, their work is either co-opted and rewritten, or they gloriously are patted on the back and told, good job, that's a great play. And they don't get the same rigorous development that other white playwrights get. So this is another space that we want to serve. So every season, my team and I sit down and go, all right, these are our tiers of community. how are we serving them? And then what are the levels of accountability we put in place, not only organizationally, but also for our community partners? So I think that is how we started our community engagement, asking ourselves who we're serving and then how we hold ourselves accountable to that service most directly.
Thank you. Jack or Elaine, any thoughts?
You know, I guess I'd just like to share a story of someone on our staff and something they've done that in the world of listening for 3 years. This is a healthcare person turned artist that really public health and nurse by training in Somalia and Ethiopia, came and did 3 years of story circles and focus groups and town halls on the relationship of immigrants and refugees in our neighborhood to the healthcare system, and then created 17 sort of video profiles, but then came and said, here's some conclusions I've drawn that, and I have to say that as a leader, I have a diagnosable need for change, much to the chagrin of many people on staff that would say, how can we transform the impossible to the probable? And this person took it to task and he said, 3 things I've noted are these interconnected issues of mental illness, reproductive health, and substance abuse. That if we can get those out of the shadows and into the surface, we can change the behavior of a community on key stigmatized areas. And has proceeded to go out and start something called City of Nations Storytelling Studio, using the crafts and tools of theater and storytelling, which is sort of the art of Somalia, storytelling, and is really intent in the next 3 years on changing the behavior of a culture and a community around 3 really difficult things. And I do think that it was by listening for 3 years so hard, connecting the dots, taking the initiative, being challenged, and saying, we can do this impossible thing and it will happen.
I would say with Our Town's initiative, this group of artists, we've got together and we started to say, things are really broken here in this country. And we were watching things escalate and escalate and escalate. And so much hadn't happened yet when we started. We had the ignorance of not knowing the future, of not knowing COVID, of not knowing all these other layers that were going to be layered. We're in a country right now where pain is layered on top of pain, on top of brokenness. And we are upending everything, trying to figure out okay, where's the ground actually going to be? We don't even know yet. And I think, the answer is going to be to walk through it as artists, to walk through it with community. And I think for me and being part of Our Town's theater initiative, for me, it really is thinking about the healing power of theater and what that is. I know that I write to heal myself and to heal others, and that I go to the theater to heal. And I know that when I watch a play, perhaps me and many other playwrights and other theater artists, I have a theory that when I watch other theater artists at the theater, that sometimes we experience plays almost in this deeper way. I watch the faces of my fellow artists, we seem to be pained more, hurt more, react. There's something that's happening in all these layers. It affects us so much, and that's why we do it. And I've had to admit that to myself, that I'm the person wailing in Cambodian rock band. I'm that person. I'm the person who's going to be, and I think that because I let theater move me, which I have to do, right? Then we can create, I have to be able to receive it that way in order to be an artist who can create it that way. And I do believe that as this country starts to heal on so many levels in so many different ways, every sort of, inequities, and the inequities within our own communities about how we make theater, which COVID has forced us to look at, and how we pay people and how we don't pay people, and how we siphon off the future of an artist and their ability to even live long. I think we have to start being really honest with ourselves about what we take. And, that's what this moment has forced me to look at and to see. And as we rebuild, to rebuild in ways in which we really take care of each other. Well, we just don't come in and do a GoFundMe at the end. That's not enough. And maybe we all can't afford to be doing this, but we'll find a way, and we'll find a way that's fair. We got to start being fair. And until we are fair, we're not even taking care of our theater community. And we have the aspiration to take care of our greater community.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Are there any last thoughts that you're like, Tara, I have to say this thing? Raymond, Jack, Elaine?
Okay. I'll say this, that community engagement work has really, I think, been the center of like my life as an artist, and I have seen the ways in which organizations do this work inauthentically for grants. And I think that's actually where it gets incredibly dangerous, because that in fact doesn't do the work that community needs. It in fact does often more damage than good. And so as you start thinking about community building and community engagement, it's not enough for one-touch engagements. And oftentimes we're looking for the grant narrative, we're writing the grant narrative, and we want to have just that really great community partner that we partner with this season. The problem with that is these communities still continue that need. And so we're always recentering the idea of not how do we engage once, but how do we continue to engage with organizations every season if we say we partner with them. The thing I think about whenever I think about community engagement is just authenticity in that process. And so when we're saying we're showing up for community, let's actually show up for community and not hope that that contributes to our bottom line in some way.
Thank you.
And if you're an artist, knowing when the opportunity is real to create for community, and knowing when it's what Raymond just described, and being able to discern the difference, and knowing when to say no to companies that are not using you in the right way.
I am feeling super lifted and ready to go do a million things from this conversation. So thank you for inspiring me to feel like maybe the seemingly impossible is possible, and that concrete action can be made, right? I'm going to leave with actually just the title of an article about Mariame Kaba and the work that she does by poet Eve Ewing. And just the title, and it's also featured in the piece, is "Everything Worthwhile is Done with Other People." I'm going to put that article in the chat. I can't speak highly enough of the work that Mariame Kaba is doing, but I just love that idea that everything worthwhile is done with other people. Jordana?
Oh, I unmuted. Sorry, that was such a mic drop moment. It needed a full silence to let it resonate. Thank you all so much, Tara, Jack, Raymond, Elaine, overcoming all adversities to get here, reminding us that we are the community that we are serving. The community is us. Our issues are their issues, are our issues. Our artists are their audiences, are our artists. Our audiences are their artists. It's all the same thing. Thank you so much. I want to invite you to exit the stage now and enjoy the rest of your evening so that I can bring my boss and friend, Nan, onto the stage to join me. Man, click the button. Click the button. She's gonna, she did it. Here she comes. Join me. Man, click the button. Click the button.
There is the most astounding loop happening.
There is, and it is so audible for us. Can I ask you to
There's the most astounding
while you're not talking?
happening.
There is, and it is so wow. Audible. I'm going to mute you, and you're going to catch up to what I just said in a few moments. And I'm going to suggest, Nan, that you actually leave the stage exit out of Hopin and then click that backstage link again to come back in, because I think you you've gotten lost in the tubes. So I'm gonna just start in Nan's absence by thanking everyone for being here. Our presenters, our moderators, our slammers last night. It's something that I continue to learn every day in NNPN world, is that the answers that the American theater is seeking is here in these people. These are NNPNers, right? Like, these are all member theaters and affiliated artists, and like, this is our community, and the genius, the things that we need to know in order to get from here to where we want to be, to grow forward. We have that. It's all here within us, and it was here today within these spaces. So I just am so inspired continually. I want to thank most deeply my fellow staff members. Rose, thank you for being on tech support and funny gift support on the staff chat. Anne and Lindy, thank you for diving into this process as relative newcomers to NNPN's at least administrative back end, as it were, and capturing all of these huge ideas that are going to be informing the conversations and the work to come in the future. Nan is back. I'm going to click that button. I want to thank Monica for helping us to create connection with the rest of the world through social media, through your thoughtfulness. Thank you for holding us accountable to you. Thank you for asking hard questions. And thank you for agreeing to come over to my house for dinner in a couple of weeks, where I will get to host you and see you in person. I have to thank my collaborator, Jess, for whom I have no words, just the most profound respect and thanks. And Nan?
You said you weren't gonna do it. Because I missed out on the loop, I don't know who on the staff you missed. I'm gonna say a huge thank you to our newbies, to Ann Morgan, who is our incoming programs director, and Lindy Rosario, who I think we've been sort of dropping hints for the last few days about, but is joining our team as a yet to be titled person who will be helping us look at NNPN's accountability, accessibility, working to make sure that we are centering in the way we just heard so beautifully from the plenary session, our communities, our anti-racist, anti-bias statement and action plan, and our strategic plan. Lindy will be working with us to help bring into our membership our 6 new core member theaters. In case you haven't heard, we will be joined as of July 1st by Theater Alliance and Raymond O. Caldwell. We will be joined by East West Players that you heard from earlier today, from St. Louis Black Rep, from with True Colors, and with Teatro Luna West, which is a company that works back and forth between, did I miss one?
And Caramia.
Yes. Caramia in Dallas, thank you. So 6 new core members joining us July 1st. There's so many exciting things happening here at NNPN. The one thing, though, that I do want to mention, we got Anne and Lindy and Jess and Monica. Rose, did we call out Rose?
Everybody deserves to be thanked at least 90,000 times. So you do your own version of a thank you, Nan.
The entire staff. Obviously, you guys have had a chance to experience what I get to experience every day, this phenomenal group of people, of humans who are so focused on collaboration and doing the absolute best they can do in every moment of their day for themselves, for each other, and most importantly, for our members and the American theater. And I think you all know how lucky you are, and I'd always like to take a moment to say how lucky I am. Thank you as well to NNPN's amazing board of directors, to our ambassadors, to our affiliated artists and our associate members, to the supporters and donors, and those of you who are New Play Exchange members who make this all of you together make this possible for us and for the American theater. I'm floundering here because I am promised Jordana I would not make her cry, but I think you all, most of you are probably aware of the fact that this is Jordana's last full convening with us as full staff. As you probably know from looking at the attendees today, we tend to not let people go very far. So despite the fact that she might not be on payroll anymore, it doesn't mean you're not going to be seeing her, because we're going to be roping her into everything possible. So my immense gratitude and love and admiration for you, and my personal thanks, as well as my thank yous on behalf of everyone who's been touched by your work. Your impact has been enormous, and I know it will continue to be. So thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
And what a day. What a weekend. What an 18 hours or whatever it was. Thank you again to all of our folks that participated in the slam last night. And most of all, to all of you for being here. You'll be getting more information for us, asking how we did, what you want to do better, other than the tech, which who knows. And what you want to know more about. We'll be getting you information on how you can see the sessions that you might have missed. Please remember Jess's shout out earlier today. If you want to drop us $2, $5, $10, $10,000, you can do that by texting to Grow Forward to 44321. And of course, we do invite you to consider joining us as one of our sustaining members, so you can get one of those super cool, fabulous deluxe tote bags to be. We're very excited about them, as you can probably tell. We might even throw in some of our other swag if you don't have things. So you never know what might arrive on your doorstep from NNPN. So thank you for your support. Thank you for being here. Jay?
Yes, thank you. This is what it looks like when we don't have a script. We're going to leave you here wishing you health, safety, comfort, joy, good food, lots of water, something restorative for your soul tonight, and wonderful, wonderful art all the way through. My best to you all, and good night.
Grow forward. See you on the other side.